All right, everybody. Lately, you all know I've been talking a whole lot about contraceptive rights because sex is fun and cool, but I don't think sex should essentially require, every time you do it, a massive risk of essentially ruining your life by either A, catching a sexually transmitted infection or disease, or B, potentially saddling yourself with the responsibility of parenthood for the next, 18 plus years. I genuinely think that, there should be recreational, casual sex that does not risk either of those two things, that can be done safely and, at people's will as long as both parties consent and all that good stuff. However, the right is very much against this. Something you guys need to understand is that the conservative ideal worldview, a utopian conservative society in their minds, is one in which men and women have very, very distinct, different paths that they travel in life. Allow me to explain. This is very often how it was done back in the day as well. And none of the things I'm saying here are just being pulled out of thin air, by the way. You can look at a lot of incel, conservative, Andrew Tate type channels, and you will hear much of this rhetoric coming from them shamelessly and mask-offedly. So, what Republicans want, their utopian society, is one in which a strong, powerful macho man is at the top of the totem pole, who makes all of the decisions and has a circle of yes men below them that all essentially just do as the dictator bids. But also, if the dictator shows weakness and is not capable of continuing to meet the expectations, standards, and what have you of these fascists, then they want to be able to oust them to put a more powerful, more macho man in power, right? And you'll notice that Republicans want to create a more miniaturized version of this on the societal scale as well. Look at your average conservative household. They very much, and they openly preach this, believe the father should be at the top, and that the father effectively owns his wife, his children, and, of course, the pets, right? So the totem pole of authority and power in the house goes father, mother, or wife, children, then dogs and cats and stuff like that, right? And then if there's a lot of the times they'll have farm animals, and those farm animals go below the indoor pets, right? That's not uncommon with a lot of conservative families, where I came from. And the idea behind this, you'll notice, is that, and we even have this enshrined in our law, children and women are property of the men who's the patriarch of their family, right? They are the property of their father or of their husband. Not only that, but in most Christian, traditional American conservative marriages, a very common practice is for the father to give his daughter off to the groom. It is a symbolic show of the fact that the father is now giving away ownership of his daughter to a man who is now the new owner, that he is deemed to be befitting of that thing. There's also the asking for the father's blessing as well to determine whether or not the man is of the father's liking for ownership of his daughter. That's essentially what the tradition does, right? But for men, there's always been a very different, this is basically the ideal conservative view of a woman's life, would be she's born, and immediately from the start of her being able to intake stimuli from the outside world, she would be under the pressure of gender expectations, wearing feminine clothing, playing with feminine toys, she/her pronouns, a feminine name, no doubt reading the Bible and the scripture, etc., living by very hardline conservative morals, the father deciding what she can and can't wear going out of the house, deciding you don't get the date until I decide when you're allowed to have a boyfriend or whatever. These are very common, very, very, very common in America. Especially in the South and with conservative families down here, because the father views the daughter as his property that he needs to protect from other men who, because, a lot of these conservative men are horrible weirdos. When they think of what other men want to do with their daughter, they think of the most horrific shit imaginable, because, to be fair, that's probably the kind of shit they wanted to do with other men's daughters when they were a kid and now as adults. And so that is why a lot of these older conservative men, when they imagine what other men might do with their daughters and why they're so, over or against their daughters dating another guy, is because they're piece of shit dudes who think any guy their daughter will date is the same. You hear this a lot in a lot of those like dad TikToks. You ever seen dad TikToks where it's like a conservative dad standing in like a cornfield and he's like, right, so if you want your daughter to love you even into adulthood and to see herself as your little girl, I'm literally word for word quoting him, you want to be a good father in these ways. You want her to find a man, he literally says this, you want to be as good of a father as possible so that she'll find a man who's like you. You want her to think about the idea of marrying a man who's like you in a good way. Otherwise, she will become fatherless, so to say, and will start dating men of all sorts of shapes, sizes, and backgrounds just to spite you. You know, just like this really deranged rant. You hear these from like a lot of the like conservative dad TikToks that go viral with millions of views, and you just got like a bunch of teenage boys in the replies like, yeah, based boomer, bro. And the reason for this is because they believe that around the age of 16, 17, 18, the more pedophilic conservatives, a lot of them, believe earlier, that immediately women should start being pushed by their fathers into marrying ideally a man of their choosing, right? Like, the father would be like, hey, my friend Joe from down at the VFW, he got a son. He served 2 tours in Iraq. He's 34 years old. You know, like, I'm imagining this, like, conservative, like veteran guy who's, like, missing several teeth on one side of his face. That's why I did that. Yeah, so, like, you see that kind of stuff, like the borderline arranged marriage in the South, where it's like you live in such a small town that like the parents already decided this couple was going to end up getting married and dating like when they were 8. Like, that is not uncommon, at least in like country, rural Florida areas away from the coast and the cities. And I'm sure it's common. And oh yeah, purity balls, such a good point. Purity balls are very common. Do you guys know what a purity ball is? A purity ball is a formal dance event typically practiced by some conservative Christian groups in the United States. The events are attended by fathers and their teenage daughters in order to promote virginity until marriage. Typically, daughters who attend a purity ball make a virginity pledge to remain sexually abstinent until marriage. Fathers who attend a purity ball make a promise to protect their young daughter's purity of mind, body, and soul. The balls are considered a part of purity culture. I'm sorry, but the writing of that sentence was really funny. Proponents of these events believe that they encourage close and deeply affectionate relationships between fathers and daughters, thereby avoiding the premarital sexual activity that allegedly results when young women seek love through relationships with young men. Critics of the balls argue that they encourage and engrave dysfunctional expectations in their minds of the young women, making them vulnerable to believing their only value is as property, and teaching them that they must subjugate their own mental, physical, and emotional well-being to the needs of potentially or actually abusive partners. Ah, yes, basically exactly my point. Yeah, I like how the Wikipedia page for it also just explains why it's horrible in the end of the definition. But like, you can look all across conservative messaging and see how a lot of it is based around the idea that around before the age of 18, ideally in conservatives' worldview, a woman at the will of her father should be preparing to marry a man. But here's how conservatives believe the ideal life of a man should go under a conservative worldview. They believe that a man should grow up, basically just boys will be boys kind of stuff. You've seen that kind of thing. Like, just a lot more go out there and be tough and scrape up your knees and get in trouble and get yourself out of it, that kind of stuff. They believe that the only way for young boys to be raised is through forced self-sufficiency, right? Some level of like tough love and forced self-sufficiency to teach responsibility. That's basically what they'll say. And I think a lot of them actually believe that, though, you know, not a very good parenting technique. And so by the time that they believe that by the time most men hit 18, they should then be getting into a trade. Back in the day, they would say college, but now the right hates college, so they don't believe in that anymore. But getting into something that will make them money and get them like a lifelong career or job. And then by the age of 30 or something, they should be much more financially well off and much more, romantically desirable, quote unquote, because they have money and stuff like that. And conservatives do genuinely believe women only care about men and being with them for the sake of their own needs being met, despite the fact they're also against the feminism movement making women have independence, but we'll get into that in a moment. And the idea is that men, you'll hear this a lot from conservatives, men are most desirable in their 30s, and a lot of conservative men say this part, while women are more desirable the younger they are. They won't specify at what age, weirdly enough. They'll just say the younger they are. If you want to know what most of these conservatives mean when they say that, you can look at Jess Purley Things, who recently tweeted, teenage girls are more attractive than, like, adult women, is what she tweeted. And then she deleted it, I'm pretty sure. That's what Jess Purley Things tweeted, yeah. Dude. Not only that, but even by creepo conservative standards, I don't even feel like that would be true, right? Like, a 26-year-old woman is very, very, like, young still, relatively, like, in the grand scheme of things, but still very much sexually developed. Like, a 26-year-old woman has, like, boobs and a butt and, like, probably thick legs and, like, is shapely and stuff. Like, they're woman-shaped, right? Like, that happens in your 20s. They don't like those things, Zan. That's, like, literally since I was a kid, I've been attracted more to, like, women going into their 20s and 30s, because unironically, there is, like, a certain level of bodily change that, like, in your shape that happens to you around 19 or 20 years old. Happened to me, where, like, my body just kind of changed shape a little bit. I was like, interesting. I look like I'm more man-shaped now than, like, boy-shaped, right? And, like, the same thing happens with women. When you see right-wingers talking about this shit, it's just pedo baiting. It's literally them trying to appease the pedos in their audience. That said, they believe that men are most desirable into their 30s when they've got their life established, pretty much, right? And so this essentially forms this tendency of the 30-year-old man marrying an 18, 19, maybe 20-year-old girl. 30-plus-year-old man, right? And that is, like, the ideal conservative, format of things, right? Because conservative men should have very young very young wives and girlfriends or whatever, and they should own their daughters. Then the cycle repeats again. That is what conservatives want to happen. But this is why they hate feminism and progressivism, because activists have pushed for women to have the right to vote and work and own property and stuff like that. And that kind of throws a wrench in the effective, legally enforced enslavement of women. And that's what it was for a very long time. The legally enforced enslavement of women. And so what ended up happening now, or what's happening now, is women kind of actually can just sort of, like, do what they want like men could before. Like, women can just sort of, like, go to college and then get a long-term career, make a shit ton of money, and buy, like, a big house, and then maybe, like, hunt for, like, a 19-year-old dude and marry him when they're in their 40s. Like, now they can do the reverse, like, Uno reverse card flip scenario, or even just, like, still ew, I know, but mostly the joke that I'm making is women can actually just go and live their lives, like their early 20s, up into their 30s or 40s, single, and just pursuing their own interests and their own career like men have done, and it has been completely acceptable for men to do in our society for a century plus. While women have been expected to find a man as quickly as possible to support you. That has been the effective construction of this. And there are countries where they legally require this, right? Like in a lot of like extremely hardcore Islam law enforcing countries, women aren't allowed to leave the house without a man accompanying them, whether it be their brother, their father, or their husband. And let's be honest, if conservatives had their way, then that's exactly what would be happening here in America. However, there is a massive market in convincing these men, sorry, I should not say convincing, but giving these men who are upset that this isn't how things are done so much anymore, validation in their desires and their sadness over how they can't have a, arranged marriage wife when they turn 35 years old who's like a decade and a half younger than them. There's a lot of like monetary gain to get out of validating those men as a woman online. One of the people who's built a very big career out of doing this is Sydney Watson, who I believe works with the Daily Wire. She's actually just straight up like paid to do this shit. She's not like a YouTuber just working from her room and talking about what she believes in. She is a grifter through and through. I'm quite certain of it. She has nearly 1 million subscribers, and this video is only a day old with over 250,000 views. And this video is called How Birth Control Destroyed a Generation of Women. That's right, guys. As I mentioned before, the right has not given up their desire and their attempts to try to take away people's rights to access contraceptive care and birth control. They want to ban that shit. They want to make it so anytime sex is had, well, you better be married. Otherwise, there's a high chance of having a baby, and there's a high chance of, if you sleep around, if they ban things like condoms and what have you, there's a high chance of catching an STI because you can't protect yourself.
Me, but please do not. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by Foom.
Oh my
God. The negative of time. Upon an art table, for we've all been.
So for those of you guys that don't know, I'm pretty sure that's what this is going to be about. There's like a bunch of conservative outrage right now about the effects that some birth control has on women's hormones, which is like, yeah, it's kind of been a symptom for a while of a lot of medication. So basically, what conservatives have been trying to do lately, and they're doing with trans-affirming care as well, is trying to point out symptoms and side effects of medication and say, look, this medication has potential side effects. Let's ban it. Not for ideological reasons, but for your safety. And then they'll pretend like they haven't been against that medicine for political reasons for like a really long time. Birth control used to make me detrimentally nauseated, but I got nauseated from everything. Well, birth control has a different effect on whoever takes it, right? So there are plenty of women who take birth control and end up having like insane mood swings and hormonal issues and just like a long laundry list of issues. It could be a lack of hair, like it could cause hair to thin out, it can cause hair to grow, it can cause balding or your hair to grow more on the top of your head. It can cause like just irregular periods and all sorts of crazy shit, right? Headaches, hot flashes. I literally can't even imagine how many symptoms. There's just so much shit. And sometimes, obviously, it doesn't work 100% of the time. Birth control is not 100% effective. It's why doubling up with as much as you can is ideal. Using the pill while also wearing a condom and pulling out. Those are 3 very effective methods that when combined will very likely get you effectively a 100% chance of not having a pregnancy issue. And then, of course, you can throw some plan B afterwards if you really want to, scorched earth, ensure there's not going to be any unforeseen, issues in the future. And if you do get pregnant, then at that point, you might as well let the pregnancy go to term because you have like a super baby and you might actually be brewing up like a Spartan super soldier of the likes of Master Chief or something, and then you should like sell the baby to science because goddamn, did that spermie make it through a lot of crazy shit.
Preoccupied elsewhere.
Hi, today would be day 500 of being a girl.
But recently, I happened upon an
they really are just seething still over Dylan Mulvaney, aren't they? You know what's funny? This is I was scrolling through Wall Street Bets, looking at the cope from the Elon Musk simps, and I saw this. I keep losing against Bud. This is Bud Light. I can't stop losing betting against Bud. Ever since the boycott, I've been buying puts, but I jumped in too late and my puts always expire worthless or don't move fast enough and I just give up and open a new position. I keep seeing Modelo taking over the market over Bud Light, but the stock just doesn't move much in the last month, down only 0.25% only. I guess it's already priced in and it's cost me over 1K already. It's also cost me my girlfriend, but that's another story. Is the stock gonna just recover from this point forward? People are just gonna forget? For those that don't know, puts are basically where you can essentially bet it's really high risk, okay? Doing what this guy was doing is really high risk because your losses can compound further than your gain, than like what you put in by a lot. Like you are essentially, like it's essentially doing what the hedge funds were doing when the Wall Street Bets GME shit happened. Only there's no market manipulation happening here to fuck this guy over. Bud's just not losing anything, and so he's just gonna have to buy those stocks back at a higher price than what he borrowed them for, and he's fucked himself so hard. But yeah, the Bud Light boycott shit is basically all fizzled out at this point. So it's a pretty dead meme.
An article titled "Conservative Influencers Are Pushing an Anti-Birth Control Message," and I thought, yes, now it feels like the right time. The article outlines several commentators and personalities, both male and female, who have made comments about the negative effects of hormonal birth control. And just to be clear, yes.
Well, no. Don't pretend like what they have against birth control is concerns about the negative hormonal effects, because everybody from users of those birth controls, as well as the doctors who prescribe them and the people who develop them, are well aware and well concerned of those things. You are ideologically against it, as well as Ben Shapiro and the rest are ideologically against it because it offers women the freedom to have casual, non-committal sex, which you view as sinful and awful and the problem with women nowadays.
There are multiple types of contraceptives. Some are hormonal and some are not, but I specifically am talking about the pill. And we'll be using a bunch of terms interchangeably, like oral contraceptive, or the pill, or the birth control pill, or hormonal birth control pill. And I'm sorry if that's at all confusing or not scientific, but it's too late to do anything about it now. The article also says that mentioning the consequences of taking the pill will instill fear in women who could otherwise benefit from this medication. It also links to
over-exaggerating the potential. So the issue with conservatives and the way they frame everything is it's always lies. And something that you'll always find out with these conservative videos when they basically refer to any article is that they're lying about the very thing they're citing. A good example of this was the other day when we covered that Sunny V2 clone who was defending him and tried to bring up a study that claimed that kids were harmed by having a trans father, but the person was trying to claim, essentially they were trying to claim that Chris Tyson, who is MTF, being trans, would have a harmful impact on the kid. So the YouTuber shows a scientific study titled, and just the title of it, about the effect of kids having a transgender father. But then I went and I looked at the study, and the study was about, by transgender father, they meant trans men, as in like FTM trans people, who are fathers to kids, not mothers to the kids. So the guy got that wrong. And then we actually read the conclusion, which was just barely cut out by the guy's screenshot he showed in the video. And it says, there is no evidence whatsoever in any data we've collected so far to demonstrate that there is any harmful impact or positive impact, any difference whatsoever on kids being risen by a trans or cis father. But even then, the study doesn't apply to having a trans mother, which is what that person was actually trying to claim. So it's just, they always do this, and it's gotten to the point where it's like, do I have to hunt down the article she's referring here to? And do you think the article actually says that it is bad to inform women who use birth control about the potential side effects because that might prevent them from using it? Do you think that's what the article said? Or do you think maybe the article said, these conservative commentators lie and over-exaggerate and fearmonger about the potential side effects of these drugs in an attempt to try to scare young women away from using them in a time where they are also attempting to take away women's abilities to terminate pregnancy in the form of like getting an abortion if it comes to that. I think maybe the article said the latter, and Sydney Watson is lying her ass off here, because that's pretty much every one of these videos we watch, but I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments in the down below telling me, well, you didn't look into it, so you have got nothing. Whatever, though. I'm not fact-checking this one myself. I'm tired.
Another article from
Code word?
February
Nah.
by Media Matters that directly goes after the comments of Alex Clark from Poplitics, who said that the pill is poison and her objective is to get women off of it. I think one of the primary problems with this topic is that people try to paint it as a left-wing versus right-wing issue, which would explain all the angry articles I found about it.
Oh yeah, for those that don't know, Sydney Watson like is a white nationalist. Like she's full on in favor of the she was like a big proponent of, for those that don't know, there was like this white nationalist Nazi group that started putting up the "It's okay to be white" posters around Australia, and she was a big proponent of like, what do you mean? What's wrong with the message "it's okay to be white"? Do you think it's not okay to be white? And like you look up that phrase, and it's like the most well-known dog whistle for like Nazism and white nationalism that there is. Basically the message of the "it's okay to be white" code phrase is that they want to make the country white, and they are upset that they are being marginalized for wanting the country to be white. And so the meaning of the phrase is "it's okay to be white," as in it's okay for our country to be white only. It has a few layers. You know, it's a little bit like chat. How many of you know what "I'm gonna keep it Milwaukee with you" means? It's a little bit like trying to decode slang, right? Where there's like layers to it, right? "I'm gonna keep it Milwaukee with you" means, so Milwaukee is where the basketball team, like the Bucks, play, right? And like "I'm gonna keep it a buck with you" means I'm gonna be serious with you, right? And then you would like also keep it. I forget how it goes. Yeah, I think that's how it goes, right? I think that's the layers. Yeah, I think that's like there's multiple layers to it. It actually requires explanation, but once you know what it means, now you know what the meaning behind it is, that when I say "I'm going to keep it Milwaukee with you," it means I'm going to keep it real with you, right? It's the same thing with a dog whistle, like "it's okay to be white." There are several layers of meaning behind it, and the intention is, if I explain what the actual insidious meaning behind this this seemingly very innocuous phrase, like nobody actually disagree. Well, there are some people that are insane, but most people don't disagree with the statement on its face. It's okay to be white, obviously, but there's more meaning to that under the surface. But if you explain it, you seem like you're schizo. Today is Wednesday. What's going on? Chat, why are you question marking me? Do you not understand? Do you not understand the "I'm going to keep it Milwaukee with you" thing? I can't find it. Anyway, it basically means like, because the Bucks, and "I'm going to keep it a buck with you," and then blah, blah, blah. It goes a couple more layers, but it makes sense. You'll understand. Anyway, my point is that, yeah, conservatives are awful. This lady tries to pretend like she's not a Nazi despite there being a pretty long-standing history of her defending like very well-known white nationalist and neo-Nazi groups and sayings and slogans. But now she kind of pretends to be this, like, centrist, she's basically doing the same grift as Shoe on Head. Like, they're pretty much, yeah. I'm just going to be honest. Like, she's just conservative woman number 879.
And that's largely because some groups view contraception, just as a general rule, as wrong and or sinful and or bad. There is also a fear that contraception will be next on the chopping block as far as other discussions around pregnancy have gone. But here's the thing. I don't view this as a sides of the aisle issue. And I believe that all women, regardless of where they sit on the political spectrum, should have an understanding of what they're putting in their body and what it inevitably will do to them. And
they do. They're on the box. They can talk to their doctor. This is a conservative push to, like, fearmonger about the very known side effects of birth control, potential side effects of birth control, I should say, to make it sound like you're doing some big, like, blockbuster story exposing to all these women about how dangerous it is, when what you're actually doing is, in most cases, just lying about the risks of using birth control. There are risks, but you're just concern trolling. The right has realized that the ideologically driven desire to take away women's rights in this way, it doesn't work. So instead, they're going to pretend like they're actually concerned for women's health and safety, and that's why they want to take away birth control. It's not about taking away their rights, it's about protecting them.
Most importantly, I believe in choice. If the pill is the right choice for you, then so be it. But by the same token, I also believe in making informed choices. And unfortunately,
Okay,
so
come
that's
on.
what as definitely flashed out again, and the moodiness.
All right, so here's
thinking
the
critically about
sponsorship.
hormonal birth control
All
largely
right, here we
prevents
go.
pregnancy. And it's especially meaningful for ladies who have been taking this medication for years and years. What do you actually know about this thing that you take every day that stops your period and largely prevents pregnancy?
Well, no, it doesn't stop your period. You're already wrong. What part of why hormonal birth control is risky in some cases is because of the effects it can have on menstruation. Some women it'll stop their period, some it'll cause even heavier periods, some it'll like delay periods and just wiggy-woggy the schedule into something different. So like she's already demonstrating she doesn't know what she's talking about because like aren't you talking about how the pill has different effects on different women and there are like certain side effects that you could have? Some you can take for getting rid of your period, Zan? Really? But wouldn't one of the side effects of that she's discussing be that sometimes it f***s with your... Oh, it can help clear up acne too, but you know what I also know? Birth control can also cause acne. That's another side effect. I have met girls who have, like, acne from birth control, and it's something that they fight against, but it's just... It fucks with their hormones, and they end up having more acne. It's another one of those side effects. One of the much more... mild side effects that are likely to happen, but like some birth controls cause heavy periods. That's like one of the side effects that some women will face are like really, really bad periods, which is part like IUDs. Like that's a whole other different form of birth control as well. Implants that go in the arm and implants that go up into the pussy. Like those are all a different other can of worms that I don't even know if they're going to get into, but there's tons of potential side effects with that, right? There's weight gain and losses. These are all things that people who use birth control know about. You want to know why? I learned all of these things from women who use birth control, and then I had sex with them.
As Dr. Hill points out, even asking the question feels risky to a lot of women. Thinking critically about hormonal birth control feels like a slippery slope to allowing it to be outlawed again, as it has been throughout history.
Zan, not
but the
virgin
alternative
confirmed?
isn't much better. Women shouldn't be expected to take a medication daily while not fully comprehending what it is doing to their bodies and their brains. But that's exactly what the current...
Wait, expected to take a medication daily? Excuse me. Taking birth control is a choice, and what you're trying to do is make it seem as though it's a battle between the left who wants to keep these women in the dark about the symptoms of these things and the right who wants to inform them fully about the medication they're taking, when in reality this is just another instance of the right trying to find an excuse to take a right from a... Funnily enough, they're the right, but they just love taking away rights. The only right they care about is the Second Amendment. And so, yeah, it's funny that they found like this weird concern trolling angle to go at it from. Does this video get interesting at any point?
Contraceptive products. A research paper called How the Pill Became a Lifestyle Drug, the Pharmaceutical Industry and Birth Control in the United States since 1960 outlines how messaging and advancement around and of the pill started to change. From the 1960s to the 1980s, the paper says that pharmaceutical companies advertised birth control pills expressly for the purposes of birth control, which, like, wow, no-brainer there. But as the pill grew in popularity, pharmaceutical companies found little incentive for investing in the innovation.
Okay. So now we're trying to do the anti-pharmaceutical company, like big pharma angle. So conservatives are very much in favor of big pharma. They elect people like Donald Trump who continue to uphold the current state of the of big pharma, of these very few companies that have a lot of money holding patents on these very life-saving drugs and inflating their prices to insane amounts in America, to the point where you can literally just go hop on over to the border of Mexico to where there are towns where you can buy insulin for $30 a vial and all that other shit that's like literally hundreds or thousands of dollars in America. You can buy for like tens of dollars, dozens of dollars over, like literally just like walk over the border into Mexico, walk into a store. It's like, yeah. Insulin patent was sold for $1. That was like a more recent thing, but I'm talking about the fact that big pharma for a long time has had a very bad reputation in America. Ask any American, they probably don't like big pharma when you say that to them. You just have to mention big pharma and their brains will go, oh, bad. Big pharma bad. Oh, monkey. You know, and that'll be their brain, right? That's what she's trying to do right now. They do the same thing with hormones and hormone blockers and all that shit, where they say, yes, but these hormones and these gender-affirming cares come from big pharma who have a monetary incentive in making more trans people, and they try to take this like bizarre, anti-big pharma approach to anti-science. But it's just anti-science and trying to take people's rights away, just with extra steps. Like they've always been doing. I mean, to be fair, Sydney Watson has been effectively dog-whistling and brainwashing people into conservative beliefs for like a decade now online, so she's pretty good at it.
Of new methods, and eventually shifted their marketing of existing contraceptive products away from the function of fertility control. It was the 1990s that brought about the very messaging we see today. And it was here that manufacturers began promoting oral contraceptives as lifestyle drugs. This was a term coined in 1978 that generally describes medications that improve a person's quality of life by treating less serious and sometimes cosmetic conditions. For the pill, new advertising targeted the medication's secondary effects, such as treating acne and reducing the frequency of menstruation. Big Pharma wanted to emphasize the control of pimples, moods, and period cramps.
Well, there are ones that can do that, apparently. Like, there are birth control pills that can do that, but can also have the side effect of not doing that.
Rather than the control of actual fertility. And
what? Okay. I'm going to inform you of a goofy little fact about medicine and science, okay? Believe it or not, there are a lot of medicines, or I should just say outright drug, compounds that have multiple medicinal uses by humans. There are literally inhalable steroids for improving asthma and other breathing conditions that have the side effect of also being a mood stabilizer, like acting as a SSRI. That's not uncommon. It's just a side effect. My mom takes started taking a new inhaler thing for her like lung conditions and shit, and she just ended up being a completely different person afterwards. Like a lot of the issues that me and her have had like through my entire life growing up, just gone. She's like a completely different person now. Like she doesn't freak out and scream over nothing like she used to, or get like mean and rude and violent. she's basically become a different person after taking it. It turns out the thing she's taking not only has the effect of acting as a steroid for breathing, for helping breathing, but it's also a SSRI. It's a mood stabilizer. And it just had a positive effect on her as a side effect. Just so happened. Some anti-Parkinson drugs are also anti-influenza type A drugs as well. Apparently lots of women use what's it called? Viagra and other other erectile dysfunction medications are taken by women to help with heart disease. That's a thing, and it actually helps them. I don't know which came first, which thing the medication was made to deal with first, but yeah, apparently they stabilize the heart. And so tons of women take it for helping with heart conditions. It is not uncommon for a medicine to have a certain intended use, to discover a bunch of positive side effects, and to start marketing around those as well. Unfortunately, we have a industry around medicine. It's not free. You can't just go into the doctor with free healthcare and just walk out with your medicine, something that, obviously Sydney Watson is against free healthcare. She's not actually in favor of anything being done about Big Pharma. She just wants there to be a ban on birth control and to attack Big Pharma as a means of getting there, even though she's fully in favor of, monopolies and peak capitalism. Although she is a Nazi, who knows? Maybe she has more, Nazgul-leaning values in that department. Does this get interesting anytime soon?
Hormonal birth control. Women are attracted to men with different smells. Yep, you got it. Pheromones. These are associated with masculine features and higher testosterone levels. And on hormonal birth control, they're attracted to men that are more similar to them, with lower testosterone levels, more feminine features, and they're typically regarded as caretakers. There are more studies that also show that taking birth control changes which men you attract as well.
The last thing that I want to make note of here is that
This video got really weird as we got further in. Now it's about how women have to be careful about taking birth control because they'll be attracted to and will attract different men because of their pheromones. I knew this was going to go insano mode, but I didn't know it was going to go that insano mode. What are the comments like? We've been doing this for 42 minutes and I'm bored. I want to see what the comments are like. Well, who would expect that messing with hormones will change people in a bad way? I was placed on birth control around the age of 16 to regulate my cycle because I had very irregular periods. Lucky for me, it made me feel crazy and I stopped taking it after a few months. One of the best decisions I've made, and I didn't even know it at the time. Why? For what reason? This 100% affects the lads. It had a huge impact on my wife and I's life. I brought this up to her after seeing Sydney talk about it before, and my wife did a ton of research and got off that garbage a while ago. Never been better. Thanks, Sydney Watson. And it does matter to the lads. We want the best for the women in our lives. Oh my god, he thought his wife was a bitch. And so he went to his wife and said, hey, you've been being a real bitch lately. Get off the birth control. I was not sexually active, but as a teenager, every sports physical came with an argument with the doctor about birth control. This started at age 12. Like, okay? Yeah. You could... That's when a lot of these effects that many birth controls are made to mitigate can come in. And also, there are people who are sexually active at 12. Definitely too young in my opinion, but it happens, and I'd prefer they're doing it safely, because I literally, in middle school, when I was in 6th grade, had a classmate who got pregnant. She was 12 years old, and it was... Everybody else there was like... Even the other students were like... We were all 12-year-olds with a girl in our class who was also 12 who was pregnant. And all of us were just like... We didn't mock her. We didn't make fun of her. We all were like, to some degree, understanding of like the bad that went down behind the scenes to cause that to happen. Because even then we knew 12-year-olds aren't supposed to be pregnant. That's a bit young. Like I expected maybe high school is when this would start to happen, but not the first year of middle school. Anyway, a man here. I worked for a large drug distribution company. I visited pediatricians and had practices in depressed areas, and one doctor told me that he tricked young teenagers into birth control with the "this cures acne" promise. He felt that he was saving young women from single motherhood and that they would have not gotten OCPs, over-the-counter birth control, over-the-counter pills, but would gladly take a medicine regularly that fought acne. I like how a lot of these are just anecdotes from people in the comments who are like, just trust me, bro. Then again, I mean, they did this with the vaccine, too. I feel like at this point, we're just going to have to deal with, like, new waves of the conservatives just finding and cherry-picking to try to make a boogeyman out of every good thing they want to take away. Because I think they're starting to realize telling people... we're just going to take away this right from you, elect us so we can do that, doesn't really work these days. So instead, they're going to try to argue, actually, this right you have is hurting you. You should elect us so we can get rid of it. So this right will stop hurting you. You know, it's like, okay, I see what you're doing there. The good old-fashioned concern trolling.